Here's a thing that not many people know about. Joyce's story, The Dead, has as its main character a man named Gabriel Conroy. And here's a spoiler. One of the main images of the story is him sitting on a bed, looking out the window at night, seeing snow falling over a cemetery. In the cemetery are crooked crosses. That's one of the phrases, crooked crosses. In any case, that was written in, I believe, published at least in 1904 in the book Dubliners. If Dubliners was a little later, I don't know. In any case, in 1875, Bret Harte, the writer of American stories about the gold rush, among them The Outcasts of Poker Flat, The Luck of Roaring Camp, wrote a novel called Gabriel Conroy. And I'm just going to read you some of the opening paragraphs. Book 1, On the Threshold. Chapter 1, Without. Snow everywhere, as far as the eye could reach, 50 miles, looking southward from the highest white peak, filling ravines and gulches, and dropping from the walls off canyons in white shroud-like drifts, fashioning the dividing ridge into the likeness of a monstrous grave, hiding the bases of giant pines and completely covering young trees and larches, rimming with porcelain the bowl-like edges of still, cold lakes, and undulating in motionless white billows to the edge of the distant horizon. Snow lying everywhere over the California Sierras on the 15th day of March, 1848, and still falling. Now, I'm going to read you, if I can find it on this iPhone, the final paragraph of Joyce's The Dead. Let's see now. Let's Google it. Google. Google. Sorry about this. Google again. Okay. Putting in the last paragraph and The Dead and James Joyce. Here we go. The last paragraph of James Joyce's The Dead, from something called The Apple Core. So get ready. A few light taps upon the pane made him turn to the window. It had begun to snow again. He watched sleepily the flakes, silver and dark, falling obliquely against the lamplight. The time had come for him to set out on his journey westward. Yes, the newspapers were right. Snow was general all over Ireland. It was falling on every part of the dark central plain, on the treeless hills, on the bog of Allen, and farther westward, softly falling upon the dark, mutinous Shannon waves. It was falling, too, upon every part of the lonely churchyard on the hill where Michael Fury lay buried. It lay thickly drifted on the crooked crosses and headstones, on the spears of the little gate, on the barren thorns. His soul swooned softly as he heard the snow falling faintly through the universe and faintly falling, like the descent of their last end, upon all the living and the dead. Now let us return to the Bret Harte paragraph and the paragraph just after that, because I want to prove something about the phrase crooked crosses. Let's do... Okay, this is so tricky. Okay. Gabriel Conroy, Bret Harte, Boom, boom, boom. There we go. Download it again, which takes an instant. Okay, boom, boom, boom. Here we go. Let's get the second paragraph again. The second paragraph. I read the first, but think of the paragraph in Joyce, and now think of this. Bret Harte. It had been snowing for 10 days, snowing in finely granulated powder, in damp, spongy flakes, in thin, feathery plumes, snowing from a leaden sky steadily, snowing fiercely, shaken out of purple-black clouds and white, flocculent masses, or dropping in long, level lines like white lances from the tumbled and broken heavens, but always silently. The woods were so choked with it, the branches were so laden with it, it had so permeated, filled, and possessed earth and sky, it had so cushioned and muffled the ringing rocks and echoing hills that all sound was deadened. The strongest gust, the fiercest blast, awoke no sigh or complaint from the snow-packed, rigid files of forest. There was no cracking of bough nor crackle of underbrush. The overladen branches of pine and fir yielded and gave way without a sound. The silence was vast, measureless, complete, nor could it be said that any outward sign of life or motion changed the fixed outlines of this stricken landscape. Above there was no play of light and shadow, only the occasional deepening of storm or night. Below no bird winged its flight across the white expanse, no beast haunted the confines of the black woods. Whatever a brute nature might have once inhabited these solitudes had long since flown to the lowlands. There was no track or imprint. Whatever foot might have left its mark upon the waste, each succeeding snowfall obliterated all trace or record. Every morning the solitude was virgin and unbroken. 1,000,000 tiny feet had stepped into the track and filled it up, and yet in the center of this desolation, in the very stronghold of this grim fortress, there was the mark of human toil. A few trees had been felled at the entrance of the canyon, and the freshly cut chips were but lightly covered with snow. They served perhaps to indicate another tree blazed with an axe and bearing a rudely shaped wooden effigy of a human hand pointing to the canyon. Below the hand was a square strip of canvas securely nailed against the bark and bearing the following inscription: Captain Conroy's party of emigrants are lost in the snow and camped up in this canyon, out of provisions and starving. Left St. Joe, October 8, 1847. Left Salt Lake, January 1st, 1848. Arrived here March 1st, 1848. Lost half our stock on the Platte. Abandoned our wagons February 20th. Help! Our names are Joel McCormick, Peter Dunphy, Paul DeVarges, Grace Conroy, Olympia Conroy, Mary Dunphy, Jane Brackett, Gabriel Conroy, John Walker, Henry March, Philip Ashley. Then in small letters in pencil, Mamie died November 8th, Sweetwater. Minnie died December 1st, Echo Canyon. Jane died January 2nd, Salt Lake. James Brackett lost February 3rd, Help. The language of suffering is not apt to be artistic or studied, but I think that rhetoric could not improve this actual record. So I let it stand, even as it stood on this 15th day of March, 1848, half hidden by a thin film of damp snow, the snow-whitened hand stiffened and pointing rigidly to the fateful canyon like the finger of death. Well, I can't find the equivalent of the crooked crosses, but notice the name Grace Conroy. Gabriel Conroy's wife in The Dead is named Greta, but there is a short story in the collection The Dead is the keystone to Joyce's collection of stories, Dubliners, and one story is called Grace. This whole thing of snow in The Dead, there's an essay I read that I found on the internet that pointed this out. Greta Conroy tells her husband of a memory she had from teenage years, which she had never told him before. They're middle-aged. Of the boy who came through the snow one night to sing at her window, who loved her, and he essentially is starving to death. Now think of the 1848 famine. There's a bit of 1848 in here, even though it's March 1848, even though this is America. In Ireland, the potato famine was 1848. A lot of starving, of course. But somewhere, where did I see an equivalent of crooked crosses? Either way, he does mention a grave. That it was all sort of like a grave. Yeah, the likeness of a monstrous grave, hiding the bases of giant pines and completely covering young trees and larches. Well, I thought, maybe I read it another day, there was something with a sort of tilted effect highlighting mortality and the state of sin. In any case, I think it's, even Richard Ellman, Joyce's biographer, points out, Gabriel Conroy being the title of an entire novel. Joyce would have been aware of Bret Harte. Joyce loved sort of sentimental songs. Why wouldn't he have loved a sentimental writer like this? Anyway, with that snow imagery, Joyce takes this property of Bret Harte's and puts it very succinctly in one paragraph. There's barely any snow in the rest of the story. I think some is falling as they drive home in their coach from this Christmas dinner. But then it really falls. But, you know, this novel by Bret Harte opens with vast amounts of snow. I think The Outcasts of Poker Flat is filled with snow. In any case, I just thought I'd draw attention to that.